When the time has come for someone to leave his earthly existence behind, that is not really the end. His soul leaves his motionless body, ascends to heaven, and from then on keeps a watchful eye on his loved ones. Or at least some people believe such wild stuff. But even if you don't care about religious ideas, persons still could have such a thing as a soul, couldn't they? Something above and beyond the physical, that gives us feelings and thoughts. Something that sets us apart from mere machines. Usually we refer to a soul when we want to explain psychological phenomena. Note that the term psychology is derived from the ancient Greek psyche and logos and roughly means soul study. If you're sad, your soul hurts. If you're mad, your soul burns. If you're in love, two souls are connected. If you're happy, clap your hands. The fact that you can get excited and be happy, grieve and be sad, or that you like music and art, and that you can feel a deep connection to someone, seems to indicate that there must be more than just the body, right? Perhaps you even believe in reincarnation and desperately hope that you won't be a toad in your next life. On the other hand, one could also get the idea that science has long since shown that we do in fact not have a soul. Has anyone ever seen one of these things on a brain scan? Nope. When you feel something, some neurons fire and boom, feelings. No magic glue needed. However, this train of thought is a bit overzealous and optimistic. The problem here is that a brain scan can only reveal correlations, but no causation. Assuming a certain region of your brain would light up like a Christmas tree whenever you think about strawberry pie, what caused what? Did the thought cause the lighting up, or did the lighting up cause the thought? That's pretty important to know if you want to claim that there's no mysterious soul messing with your brain cells. Unfortunately, the brain scan cannot decide that. It only shows what happens, not why it happens. But how can we decide then? Is there something like a soul? Do our experiences justify such a conclusion? Well, that's a philosophical question. Before we can even attempt to answer the question, we must first get another question out of the way. What the hell are souls anyway? Let's try it this way. If you observe a living being, you will find that it displays a lot of strange behavior. For example, a cat can run and jump, hear and see things, eat, drink and sleep, and it can also show affection and cuddle and purr, just before it bites and scratches you for no reason. That calls for an explanation. Why can the animal do all this? What is responsible for it? One way to offer an explanation is to say that all this works mechanically. Such an explanation would refer only to physical causal chains that produce behavior after getting some environmental input. Cat sees mouse, cat brain does some stuff, muscles contract and cat jumps on the mouse. Fair enough. But can you really explain everything mechanically? Love, grief, happiness, desires, reason, and consciousness might all not be explainable mechanically. Then you would need something else that goes beyond physics, a soul. Souls are immaterial things that you can't understand when you try to find them in the physical world, and they are responsible for thoughts, emotions, and the like. The French philosopher René Descartes made exactly this his argument for the existence of a soul. All physical processes in our world can be explained mechanically. But mental processes, especially rational thinking and consciousness, can hardly be explained mechanically. The best explanation for such things is the existence of a soul that lies beyond the physical world. Philosophers like Descartes, who claim that we have a soul, commit themselves to a thesis called dualism. Dualism states that there are two fundamentally different kinds of stuff in the world, the physical and the mental. The body consists of the physical stuff and the soul consists of the mental stuff. Descartes called these different kinds of stuff or substances res extensa and res cogitans. which translated means extended thing and thinking thing respectively. Everything that is physically extended is made of the physical substance and cannot think, and everything that thinks is made of the mental substance and cannot be physically extended. That is, the physical substance is what gives you things like arms, legs, kidneys and a brain, while the mental substance is necessarily immaterial and gives you things like thoughts, beliefs, desires, emotions and consciousness. According to Descartes, a person's soul exists independently of the brain. However, the soul is in a causal connection with the brain. So the body can influence the soul, for example in the form of sensory perception, and the soul can influence the body, for example by making the body move. If you find this absurd, you probably find the opposite position much more likable: physicalism. Roughly speaking, physicalism says that there is only one fundamental kind of stuff: physical stuff. The general idea is that all mental things in our world somehow result from purely physical interactions and processes. Mental things like thoughts and consciousness do exist, but they are either identical to physical things or somehow result from them. As the Australian philosopher Frank Jackson puts it, if you made a complete duplicate of our physical world ranging over the whole universe and its timeline, and only of the physical world, you would get all the mental things for free. In other words, a purely physical copy of our world is just identical to our world. Dualists, on the other hand, would hold that in such a duplicated world, nothing thinks, feels, or maybe even lives. You simply forgot to include the souls in your copy of the world. Well, but who is right? Okay, let's take a critical look at Descartes' theory. Even if you assume that a soul can explain mental phenomena better than mechanical processes, you should have some questions here, because Descartes' position has some serious difficulties. For starters, why can my soul only affect my brain and no other parts of my body? The brain seems to be this weird telephone between my soul and my body. Couldn't my soul directly influence my arms? And more importantly, why does my soul not directly affect other people's brains? There seems to be no principled reason for why my soul cannot tell other people's brains what it wants. So why is it strictly tied to my brain? Secondly, and relatedly, what is even the mechanism here? By which means can the soul take effects on the physical and vice versa? It remains completely mysterious how there could be constant and seemingly effortless interaction between two substances that do not share a common nature. Thirdly, are the effects of and on the soul even compatible with the laws of energy conservation? Thanks to champions of physics like Leibniz and Joule, we know that physical energy remains constant in an isolated system. So, if the soul causes physical things to happen, it has to provide energy for those things. When we look at our body and its actions as a physical system, however, we do not need some sort of soul energy to account for the stuff our body does. But then we may ask how the soul can intervene in the world of the physical at all if the latter is causally closed. This last point seems to be especially devastating for Descartes and dualism in general, since this consideration is the basis for a very strong argument for physicalism. This so-called causal argument was put forward by the British philosopher David Papineau, or maybe you could call him the Soulist. For the argument, we only need 4 highly plausible assumptions. First, mental states cause other mental states. This seems to be completely obvious to anyone who has ever had a longer train of thought. Have you ever noticed that you've forgotten something and suddenly you panic? Obviously, one mental state, your memory, caused another mental state, an emotion. The second assumption is that mental states cause physical states. That is at least as obvious. Whenever the desire for unhealthy snacks leads you to the refrigerator, this is exactly what happens. Your desire, a mental state, causes you to move, a physical state. The resulting picture suggests that the soul would be at the start of two distinct types of causal chains. It causes other things in your soul and it causes things in your body. However, this picture no longer looks so simple if we include the third assumption. Physical states have sufficient physical causes. This is an appeal to the laws of physics and energy conservation. Basically, this assumption states that if a physical event has a cause at all, that cause must be physical. This is part of our best scientific theories and empirically extremely well confirmed. There is no counterexample in nature. For example, imagine pulling your hand away from a murderous cat. Everything that happens here can be wonderfully explained by listing only physical causes. The transmission of stimuli through the nervous system and a few cognitive mechanisms are quite sufficient to fully explain the pulling away of the hand. Okay, now it looks like at least a lot of our physical states are constantly caused by both mental states and physical states. This is not impossible, but highly unlikely. Circumstances in which one and the same effect is caused equally sufficiently by two completely different events are called causal overdetermination in philosophy. There are, of course, cases of causal overdetermination. If you set fire to a haystack at two different places in the haystack, it will burn down completely. However, the burning of the haystack would have been sufficiently caused by one of these two fires. If you set fire to a point A, the haystack will burn down completely. If you set fire to a point B, the haystack will also burn down completely. In fact, we have set both points A and B on fire. What caused the haystack to burn down now? Well, that's causally overdetermined. But this does not happen constantly. In the vast majority of events, it is possible to pinpoint causes for certain events. And this is the final assumption of the argument. Our actions are not generally causally overdetermined. In other words, what we do is not always caused by two independent events. If the first three assumptions hold, we must either conclude that many of our physical states are overdetermined by the soul and our body, or we accept that mental states are dependent on physical states in one way or another. Since it is implausible and completely unjustified to claim that constant overdetermination is the case, we should conclude that the assumption that mental states are somehow dependent on physical states is our best explanation for mental phenomena. The consequence of this is that mental states are not produced by those mysterious immaterial things Descartes describes. Instead, they are just physical things and a product of your brain. And if all our mental states are just physical things, there is no reason to believe that we have an immaterial soul. Everything that Descartes used to show that not everything can be explained mechanically is most probably a product of mechanical processes, just like everything else. So, do we have a soul? Do such things exist? To put it bluntly, no, there is no soul. Such things do not exist. There are no non-physical, purely mental things. That is also the broad consensus among contemporary philosophers. There are a lot of problems with dualism. Physicalism, on the other hand, is a highly plausible view that is able to explain a lot with only a few assumptions. The remaining problem, of course, is to explain how purely physical processes can result in emotions, consciousness, rational thought, perception, and all the mental phenomena that we observe. That, however, would be the topic for a future episode. Thanks for watching the video. Are you convinced? Leave us a like then. Or do you see a flaw with the argument? Feel free to share and discuss in the comments below. If you have a philosophical question you would like us to answer, please let us know. If you like what we do, please support us by subscribing, or maybe you want to become a patron. Link is in the description. Goodbye, and until next time.